Gemara, we are up to Masechta Chagigah Daf Daled Amid Aleph by the two dots. So we're continuing to explain the Mishnah, those exceptions who are exempt from going to the other level. So the Mishnah said a tumtum and androgynous. A tumtum is someone that we cannot tell if they're a male or female because there's a skin growth obstructing our view of the genitals. And androgynous is someone that has both signs. So says the Gemara, it says a pasuk. All the males have a mitzvah to go and make that trek 3 times a year. I could have said Zachar. Zachar itself would have told us a male lahaitis and ashim to exclude women. Zechurcha, saying your male, what does that mean? Lahaitis, an additional limitation to exclude tumtum and androgynous. Now, a tumtum is someone that we don't know if they're a male or a female because we can't tell their signs. Androgynous is someone that halachically we don't know what the status is. We can see their gender, but they have both signs, male gender and a female gender. The question is halachically, what is their status? So they're excluded because it says churcha, and then it says kol churcha, all your males. So first instance, the Gemara wants to say that the kol is coming to actually include le rabbis esaktanim, to include youngsters that they do have a mitzvah to go and make that trek. Let's go analyze this rice. Should come to exclude women. Why do we need a specific pasuk to exclude women? Don't we have a rule? It's a time-bound mitzvah to go 3 times a year. Is a very much time-bound mitzvah, and we have a rule. Any time-bound mitzvah, women are potter. We learn on Kedushin in the end of the first period that the Lamdal that a woman is exempt from a time-bound mitzvah. We learn out from the fact that in the Torah, the juxtaposition of the mitzvah tefillin with the mitzvah of learning Torah, where it says, Vishanantum livanecha, then it says Kshartum loisayidecha. So just like Torah is only for the males, so too the mitzvah of tefillin is only for the males. And since tefillin is a time-bound mitzvah, we compare all time-bound mitzvahs to tefillin, and there are exceptions, obviously. With time-bound mitzvahs, women are chayiv, as Gemara there explains. So if the women are exempt anyway, why do we need a pasuk zachar or schurcha to tell you that women are exempt? We would have thought here otherwise. Why so? It's if we do need it. I would have thought, why shouldn't we? We learned yesterday that we can make this equation to the mitzvah of hakel, which is also about coming and seeing and viewing. And just like by hakel says clearly in the pasuk, anoshim, v'noshim, men and women are obligated. So we would have thought that so too when it comes to the mitzvah of riyah. Malal noshim chayavas, they're obligated. Avkan noshim, women are obligated. I'll tell you that women are exempt. I told you a few days ago, yesterday. There's an argument with the Rishalmi and Al Gemara exempt from what? According to the Rishalmi, they're exempt from being a carbon, but they still have the mitzvah of Riyah. According to Al Gemara, they're exempt not only of bringing a carbon, they're also exempt from the mitzvah of Riyah, of generally of going up. They do have the mitzvah of Simcha, but we had the Gemara Shanda Baba Beis. It's machlekes whether the mitzvah devolves on the woman herself, the mitzvah of Simchas Yamtiv, which in those days meant bringing a sacrifice, or it's a mitzvah on the husband to make the wife the Simcha. Okay, so we understand why we need a pasuk for a woman. The next thing the Brisa said was to exclude tumtum madreignis, exclude a tumtum madreignis. Bishlei madreignis, I understand why you need a special pasuk because it has also a male gender sign. So I would have thought perhaps because of that they would be required to go to Euler Regel. So therefore you have to tell me they don't. I would have thought the Eastlate Tzadzachros, it has a Tzadzachar, the male aspect. L'chayv, the Beria B'fnei it's considered a separate entity. It's considered either a third gender altogether, androgynous, or at least regarding halachic things, it's considered different halachas. Fine. Elo tumtum is. It is a male or a female, just we don't know what it is. So why would the Torah come to exclude it? Sveiku, it's a doubt. Me, it's a krol and mutter sveiku. You need a pasuk to tell me that it could be that someone is a woman and she's exempt. Now, there's a big argument in the Rambam and the Rashba. According to the Rambam, the fact that every time you have a suffix in the Torah, doubt from the Torah, but always take the stringent side, is only from the rabbis, that rule. So then, the Gemara's question makes sense. Because from the Torah's perspective, you don't know, you don't do it. So therefore, the Gemara's question is, okay, we're machmir because the Rabbanu told us to, but according to Torah, you don't have to. So the most question is, why would the Torah need to tell you that according to Torah, a woman doesn't have to, this tumtum doesn't have to go? Anyway, we would know tumtum doesn't have to go, but we don't know if it's a male or a female. But according to the Rashba learns that that this that we say, the suffix in the Torah, we are mekel. We're machmir. That guf is from the Torah itself. Then you do need a pasuk to go ahead and to tell us. But in this case, you're exempt. So therefore, that's one of the proofs they bring to the Rambam. But the way Tosfos seems to be saying here is that in this case, even though suffix mahat Torah generally the Torah is machmir, but in this case we would not have been machmir, and that's the most question. So why need a pasuk to tell us not to be machmir, and why wouldn't we be machmir? Because there's a problem. If we're machmir, say to the woman, okay, go the regel. Remember, according to our Gemara here, we're talking about the regel and bring a carbon. If she's a woman and she doesn't have the mitzvah of bringing the carbon, and she does bring the carbon, she's actually bringing a chulin to the azara. She's bringing an ordinary animal into the base of English, and that is a prohibition. So in this case, if we don't know if somebody's a male or female, we wouldn't say, okay, be machmer and go there and bring the carbon. We would say, don't, because you might be proactively violating the Torah. So the Gemara therefore asks, so what are the passages to tell us not that you're exempt? Says the Gemara, you know why over here we're talking about the different kinds of tumtums. We're talking about keshebeim bechutz. We can see part of the gender, male gender, on the outside. We cannot see the full male gender, therefore we don't really know what it is. But part of it is outside. So because it has a little trace of a male gender, we would have thought that perhaps it should be chayiv. That's why you have to eliminate it and say no exception. How we learned? All the males. So right now, interesting. Everything in that pasuk is coming to exclude, but the color is coming to include. That we're saying there's another person who is included in the mitzvah. The rab is a kan to include children. Doesn't make sense. But now, didn't we learn chutz chezer katan? Mishnah says that children are exempt. I'm going to buy a cash. It's not a problem. There's different ages. Can be a child who reaches the age of maturity, then it's mandatory to train him. So you have to bring him with you. Can be a child that did not reach the age of maturity. Says the Gemara, cotton shegil a child reach the age of maturity. Who says that you have to train a child? It's only the Rabbanon. And this is a pasuk in the Torah. The Rabbanon, the only mitzvah that Tzemach Tzedek writes that from the Torah we have a mitzvah to train children is Torah, Talmud Torah, Shnan Tulu Benecha. But that's it. Or the Manatons Benechem. And that's it. There's no other mitzvah to teach your to do the Rabbanon. So the Torah will tell you that you have to bring your kid, to train your kid, to bring him to the base of English. Says, you're right. You're right. This pasuk is only an asmachta. It's only like, we discussed very few times what asmachta means. It's only from the rabbis, and we linked it on this pasuk, associated with this pasuk. Says he will show. So what do we need the pasuk called for? To follow the view of the acherim. And what is the acherim? Is Rab Meir. We'll learn the end of Gemara is that Rab Meir was penalized because of some kind of a ploy that they made, a strategy that they devised, which the rabbis weren't happy with. They called them acherim. So many times Rab Meir is called Rab Meir, and sometimes it's called acherim. He's called acherim. The question is, why not always? He's called acherim. Some say only when he's repeating a halacha that he learned from his teacher Elisha ben Avu, who's known as Elisha Acher, or only post that penalty does he come. That's what Tosfos says in Sefer. Acherim, they say that there are other people who are exempt. Hamekametz, if somebody, their job is to collect all the dung and feces out there. And Rashi says it's used to help tan leather. But because it has a terrible stench, and Ramatar people who melt down copper, again, that's a terrible odor, Bursi and the tanner, all of these are Turnaria. They're all exempt from Bria. Why? Because it says, Kol Zechurcha. The pasuk says that you have to join the congregation, join everybody else. And if you have a terrible stench, a terrible odor, it's not fair for everybody else. Only those who can mingle with everybody else. The exception is, the exception is those who are not suitable to join all the males, they are exempt. Everybody wonders why the Rambam omits this halacha when he lists all the exceptions. But this exception is different than all other exceptions. All other exceptions are inherently, there's a problem with the person. A woman, tumtum adragin, here, there's nothing wrong with the person. It's the situation. So that's a very different category. It says women are exempt, and slaves that are not free. Now, what do you mean slaves are not free? The moment you call them a slave, obviously they're not free. What's the emphasis here? That have not been liberated? Because once they are liberated, they're full-fledged Jews. Says we explain why we need to tell you that we have to give an exemption to women. If they're ordinary slaves, why would you think that they're higher that we have to tell you the potter? Because it says in Pasuk of Pnei Ha'adon Hashem. Sorry, how do you know women? So we know how women are exempt. It says Churcha. How do you know that Avodim are exempt? Why should they be exempt? It says in Gemara across the Pasuk of Pnei Ha'adon Hashem. It says you should go 3 times a year and visit all the males to the master Hashem. It's a strange expression, the master Hashem. You just say El Hashem. Wasn't the master Hashem to say that only people who have one master Hashem? The exception is a slave has another master, and therefore they are exempt. Says Gemara, I don't understand. But this is very interesting syntax of the Gemara. First, the Gemara says, "How do you know?" The Gemara says, "What do you need to tell me? I know it anyway." Which is a strange way of the Gemara saying it. If the Gemara really thought that you don't have to say, what are you asking me, Nolan? How do you know? The Gemara is saying here, what do you, the pasuk for mechdi? Kol mitzvah sheisha chayev, but evet chayev, but any mitzvah woman is chayev, a slave is chayev. Kol mitzvah she'ena isha chayev, but eina evet chayev, but any mitzvah woman is exempt, a slave is exempt. The Gemara, how do we know? If we learn out law meisha, it says over here that by a woman, when we give her divorce, as the cost of law, you should write to her. And it says by a shivcha, by a maid, that is half freed and half not freed. It says that a full freedom was not granted to her. And the Gemara says it's talking about someone who's a half a slave and half free. So it says the word law there. So we compare the two. As the Mephoshim will talk about the difficulty, it's talking about a maid versus a woman. So how do you know about a male servant? All we know is that a female slave is just like a woman. What's up with a male servant? So the simple answer is the Chagigah and others want to say is because we don't need a pasuk to tell you that a female slave has the same laws that a female. Why shouldn't she have the same laws as a female? And a slave becomes Jewish. Why should it be any different? Obviously, you need to tell you something that we wouldn't have known. A male is chayiv. Anyway, so since we know that a male has all the laws of a female and a female is exempt, so a male obviously is exempt. Why is it that we need to have a special pasuk to tell you that a slave is free? Says the Gemara. When comes and answers, we're talking about. You remember the first page that there's a Mishnah Rishayna, Mishnah Acharayna. The Mishnah Rishayna, we had Beis Hill's view that if someone who had 2 masters, one of them liberated him and set him free, so he's half slave, half free. The first Mishnah Beis Hill says yes, it's mandatory for him to go to the Beis Hamikdash. He's half free. And then the Mishnah Acharayna, the second Mishnah comes along and says that no, that the fact that that we're going to compel the owner to set him free, even though we didn't set him free already, halachically is considered free, and therefore he's chayiv al mitzvah. So Rabbeinu says, "Lo half free and half slave." So we would have thought. And to tell you what, that he's exempt, we would have thought, look, he's half free, he should be chayiv. To tell you no, that he's exempt. Like Hill said, like the Mishnah Rishayna, it says, no, slaves that are not free. What kind of expression of slaves are not free? What do you mean they're not free? They're not free at all. They just say slaves. At least that's what a slave is. A lab doesn't mean they're not completely free. Who's not completely free? It's half and half. And it's talking about according to the first Mishnah, where Beis Hillel maintains that this person half free and half thing is chayiv and chayiv and can exist, and therefore it's come to tell you that he's exempt from going to the. We would have thought he has to go to the Beis Hamikdash. He's exempt from the Beis Hamikdash because he has another master, according to the Mishnah Rishayna. But according to Mishnah Rishayna, it's totally unnecessary because he's a free man anyway. Says the Gemara further, the Mishnah continued. Somebody is crippled, blind, sick, or azokin, too old to walk. Tell me what we learned. It says in Pasuk like 3 times a year, Shalosh Regolim. Prat, it comes to example about when somebody's amputee and he has a stump on his leg. Now, yesterday we actually learned from the Pasuk Pa'amim. Here we're bringing it from Regolim. We already had a taste in a few places. Actually, taste here says something else. A few places we had. Many times the Gemara brings a Pasuk, which is not the right Pasuk, but because it's so much easier to understand, the Gemara just brings it, doesn't bother to bring the correct Pasuk because they know they brought it down somewhere else. So it says regolim, feet. So obviously it has to be your full feet. The regolim, you'll be able to walk on your own feet. Prat lechigel, I cannot walk on our feet or blind or somebody's old. and for somebody who is not able to walk on the street. Now, what other examples are there? You already said somebody's crippled, somebody's sick, old, can't see. What else is there? Which any I would come to include. Somebody who's very delicate. The chsiv, and it says, and they can't walk without shoes. And the thing is, in the Beis Hamikdash, you need to wear shoes. We learn you have to remove your shoes, and therefore. But the Gemara will bring a different pasuk here, and Tais already wonder why not. Why bring a different pasuk? So it says, "Who asked you, Rambas Chatzedi? Who asked you to go ahead and crawl around in my chutzner?" That means you're crawling around with your feet, your shoes. Why are you walking around with shoes? Generally, we learn it from the pasuk, "Sha'al no lechem and aglecha," remove your shoes, and this person cannot walk on the sand without his shoes. Says further, Tana, we learned odel, somebody who is an odel, somebody who is not circumcised, an uncircumcised person, but tame, and somebody who happens to be impure, are potter from the rear, exempt from rear. Now, of course, they cannot walk into the Beis Hamikdash. What do you mean potter? They're not allowed to. It means that they don't even have to bother sending their karbanos through an agent, through a proxy. Now, Odel is in Yivamas and in many places is an argument between Rashi and Tosfos. Whenever the Gemara talks about Odel, what are we referring to? According to Rashi, it includes even a hemophiliac. Let's say his two brothers, and it runs in the family. It's genetic. Even though two brothers passed away under the knife during Mila, this person is still considered an Odel. According to Tosfos, we're talking about somebody whose parents didn't want to circumcise them because it's too much pain. They think it's not the right thing. It's inhumane, like in Iceland, but or other countries. But if somebody, according to Tosfos, is an oral because they're hemophiliac, that's called an onus, and they don't fall under this category. So the Gemara says, "Oral tamei the potter exemplary should be shlemet tamei." I know tamei is potter. The Chsiv says in pasuk. It says in the pasuk, "Uvos shama." It says that you should go to the Beis Hamikdash. And then the next pasuk says, "V'havesim shall bring with you your karbanos." So obviously, we learn whoever can come brings a carbon. Kol sheyeshne b'biyah yeshna. Anybody who's able to come can bring karbanos. The chol she'eina b'biyah eina bo. El odel minol. How do you know that an odel is cannot come? How do you know an odel can't walk into the Beis Hamikdash? Why not? Says the Gemara, Hamani Rabbi Akiva. This follows the view of Rabbi Akiva, not the rabbi. The rabbis actually hold an odel is no different than everybody else. So Rabbi Akiva says the marbi, he includes odel l'takit. He thinks that an odel has the same status as someone who's tamei. The time you learn, Rabbi Akiva says, it says in pasuk, it talks about the disqualifications of a kohen, and it says if a kohen happens to be a mitzvah or a zav, he shouldn't need till he becomes Torah. So it says over there, ish, it starts off, ish. Why does it say it repeats it twice? Ish. The rabbis is an odel. Will tell you that an odel is included here as well, that is disqualified. And this pasuk talks about mitzaras, zav, and or tamei. So therefore, we know that an odel is included. It's the same thing. And what? And there the pasuk talking about eating truma, it's qualified eating truma. So the same thing over here. Odel has the same status as the tamei. So according to Rabbi Akiva, odel cannot walk the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, is exempt from riyah. Tanabam, we learn tamei patam l'riyah. We learn that a tamei person is exempt from riyah. See what it says of us, shama. You should come there and bring your carbon kosher. Yes, should be anybody can come arrive. Yeshiva brings a carbon kosher. If you have no, you cannot, and you're not invited into the Beis Hamikdash. You don't bring carbon. Rabbi Yochanan ben Dahavoyim, and we already had this debate about Rabbi Yochanan. Said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, somebody's blind on one eye. He's also potter in the rear. He's potter from rear. It says in the pasuk Yeroeh. That 3 times a year you should be seeing a year, and we read it as if it says year. The way Rashi learned Yeroeh, the Eibishter comes to see you, the way you should be seen by the Hashem, they should come to see you, is year, you should come to see the Eibishter. Just like Kadesh Bo Lerois, just like you come to be seen by the Eibishter. The Eibishter comes with his, no flaws. You should also see the Eibishter on any flaws. No defects, you chose come down any defects. So the Gemara now says an interesting, a little bit again. Rav Huna, Kimoti lahikron. So we did the segue is we just brought this pasuk about seeing the Eibush. The Eibush sees us, and the way, and the Eibush is coming to see us. So Rav Huna says, Kimoti lahikron. When he came to this pasuk of Yeroeh Yida Bochi, he began to cry. Somebody said, a slave that the master is dying, he's so anxious to see you. Yisrachik min menu will distance itself from you. The Chsiv says, Where did we say Hashem distanced himself from us? It says, we just said on the page, when you're coming to visit us, you come to visit me, who needs this? Who asked you this? That you trample in my courtyard. Here David says, I can't wait for you to come. And then he says, I don't want you. So what hope do we have? This is the basis that we've seen that Rashi learns that we start out the way we learn Yerah Yira. We start out that Eibishter comes to see us, and then we should see the Eibishter. Not like Tesa learns we go see the Eibishter, the Eibishter comes to see us. The way the Gemara writes it here is that the Eibishter is anxious to come and see us. The Gemara continues, Rav Huna, Kimoti Lahaikra Huna. When he came to this pasuk, he would cry. The following now you're talking about people who came to Psukim and cried how Hashem sort of in a way Chas V'Shalom disowned us or repelled us. They began to cry. It says the pasuk it was a Vachto Shlamim. It says you should go ahead and slaughter a carbon Shlamim, but Chalto Sham, you should eat it there and rejoice with Eibishter. A slave, that the master wants you to join him in a meal, then suddenly Yisrachik Menu turns around and says, I don't want you. The Chasibah says the Pasuk, the Navi says, Shai says, what do I need? All your kabbanas? Hashem says, Hashem, I don't need your kabbanas. So isn't that tragic? Rabbi Lazar, when he came to the following pasuk, he would cry. By Yosef's brothers, it says, when he told them that I am Yosef, your brother, they were stunned and they had nothing to say. They couldn't respond to him. They were so confused. They were, and they had nothing to say. The reprimand of a person. Look how they stumbled for words. They had nothing to say. They were lost. Tongue-tied. I'm sure the Eibishter reprimands us. Well, how lost are we going to be? Everybody wonders, where do we see any teichacha from Yosef? When he said, Ani Yosef, where do we see any teichacha? All he said was, I'm Yosef. Just the fact that he told them I'm Yosef, and maybe he didn't give them reprimand was the greatest reprimand. Because whatever he would have said wouldn't be enough after what his brothers did to him. Just by telling him he's Yosef, that itself seems to be was a teichacha. He began to cry, which passed by Shmuel. They said when Shmuel finally brought down, when Shaul brought down Shmuel after he passed away. Why did you give me so angry? Why did you bring me from Gan Eden back to this world? Very painful. Why was Shmuel Tzaddik so scared? And he was scared that he's coming back to this world will be rejudged. Surely we, Shmuel is such a great tzaddik, equal to Moshe and Aaron. So surely, we have what to worry about. Shmuel Mai, what's the story with Shmuel? So the Gemara, how do you know he was scared? Because it says in Pasuk, the woman said to Shaul, Elakim, because he went to this woman to try to bring him down. I see two people, it says in plural, I see two people coming up. Why two people? Today, Mashma, Chad Shmuel, okay, he brought back Shmuel. Who's the other person? The Oza Shmuel, she couldn't do it, but Shmuel went and brought Moshe with him. Why did he bring Moshe? Amalei, he said, maybe they want to rejudge me. So come with me. There's nothing in the Torah that you wrote that I didn't fulfill. Now, Taisa explains that Moshe Rabbeinu can testify he wasn't around then, but he's going to repeat every single thing he did, and he wants Moshe Rabbeinu to say, yes, that's correct. That's the right way to do it. So you see that Shmuel was worried. Says the Gemara, he came to the following pasuk, he would cry. It says in the pasuk, "Yitin ba'ofar piyu," would place the dust in your mouth. Ula yeshtikla, maybe that's painful, and ula maybe there's some hope. Says the Gemara, kula hai, so much suffering, but ula, it's only maybe that there's hope. Or similar in a similar manner, he would cry. It says the pasuk. Bakshu, it says the pasuk, Bakshu, you should search for Hashem, Tzedek, Bakshu, you should search for justice, search for humility. Ulai tistra b'yayim af Hashem. Maybe the Eibishter will hide, conceal his anger. Maybe. Look, you're seeking justice, pursuing justice, humility, and maybe the Eibishter will hide his anger. What hope do we have? Ravasi came out like when he came to follow the similar vein, Bachi cried, says the Pasuk, Sinu Rav he hates evil. He loves good. Yitziga b'shar mishpat, and he will place you there in the place not gates of judgment. Ula yechanan Hashem. Perhaps perhaps the Eibishter will have compassion. Again, find favor. Ulai, kula hayv, ulai. Rabbi Yossi when he came to follow the Pasuk, Bachi, he cried. And this following Gemara is an amazing Gemara and very difficult to understand. It says, "V'yesh nispe b'loy mishpeh," that sometimes people will pass away without justice. Mi ikar, Rabbi Yosef said, "Mi ikar the azav l'zimnei." Is it possible that somebody should die before their time? Says the Gemara, yes. Ki had Rabbi bar Abaye. Abaye had a son called Rabbi. Haveshkia gabe malach hamavet. He was very friendly with the angel of death. So then what happened was the Malach HaMavis, the Malach HaMavis said to the Shliach, the Malach HaMavis said to one of the angels, Zil Aisle, I want you to bring it, her time is up, Miriam Megadla Sia Nashai. I want you to bring me Miriam, the one who braids women's hair. In Shabbos it said this is Yoshka's mother. Ozol Aisle Miriam Megadla Danik. He brought the wrong Miriam. Brought the Miriam who raises children. Must be that Malach HaMavis didn't spell out exactly which Miriam it is. Just said Miriam, that the woman Miriam was busy, and he brought the wrong Miriam. Amalei, so the Malach HaMavis said to this Malach that he said that I'm not Miriam. I told you I want you the Miriam who braids women's hair, and you brought me the wrong one. Amri, that's what I told you. Amalei, so the Malach said, no, should I bring her back? Bring it back to life. Amalei, so Malach HaMavis said, now that you brought her here, no, let her stay here. In other words, we see yesh nishpe b'lei mishpeh, that people die prematurely before their right time. A mistake happened. Says the Gemara, if it was not her time, how did Malach HaMavis even were able to get her, snatch her? So the Gemara says, again, we learned this a number of times in Shas, that when a person is vulnerable, terrible things can happen. Murphy's Law. Having this is what happened. Having a kitna metada biyad, she's holding this thing that she stokes coal with in her hand, and she was moving coal about. And she's cleaning out the oven. She then took it was very hot. And she took it by mistake. She placed it on her knee, and suddenly burnt her knee. So now she was vulnerable. The Isra Mazla, her mazel now was down. By Sisa, therefore the Malach was able to grab her. Like we had before, Rabbi Chizda heard the sound of the tree cracking. That's when the Malach always got him. Can you do that? He had no right to take her. He took it by mistake. You can just hold her. He said, there's a pasuk. The Malach says it happens that people can die sometimes unjustly. Amalei, so Bibi said to the Malach HaMavis, doesn't say in pasuk, generation goes when the time is ready, and then the next generation follows. You can't take them prematurely. You don't understand. He says, I take this person that I took by mistake, and I have her in my crowd. I don't give it over to the people who takes care of the dead, whose name was Duma of certain Malach. This woman has to hang around with me, and as Rashi learns, travels all the worlds until the years are up. And Adamol do not give it to Duma. If you think about it, that's like kafakela. It's even worse. You don't give her a final judgment so she can go to Gan Eden or even Gehenim for 11 months. Then she goes to Gan Eden. Here, she just has to hang around until her time comes. What happens to her X year? Let's say she had 5 years left to live. What do you do with the surplus years? Malach HaMavis says, if I can find a rabbi somewhere, that does not stand his ground and he's moichel everybody, and it's very easygoing. I give those years to that person. And that's an exchange. What exchange? What a strange Gemara. And what's stranger here is Rabbeinu Chananah. I haven't seen anyone talk about Rabbeinu Chananah, but I'll tell you. First, Rabbeinu Chananah says that it seems to him, or some people say, if you look at Rabbeinu Chananah right here, it's just a passage of Rabbeinu Chananah. We'll learn this and we'll finish for today. Rabbeinu Chananah says as follows. Yesh nispa b'lei mishpat. If you have it on your Gemara on the left side there. Ma'aseh de Miriam Megada Neshaya. This story of Miriam, who braided hair, Miriam Megada Darki, who taught children, the Ischalif Leila Shlicha, that the Shlich, the agent made a mistake, got the wrong one. But I see Miriam Megada Neshaya, the Yesh Misha Omer, are those who say, She'ki'inyan Cholam, Rod Vorm Halal. Cholam was a dream. About me, this didn't happen, it was a dream. Not only that. Now look at the next part. Okay, it's a dream. He continues. Not that he was having these conversations with Malach HaMother, just like that. He had a dream that the Malach came to him in his dream. However, look what he continues. It seems that he had this hobby that he would deal and grapple with shadim, with demons. Therefore, we can say, because he's playing around with demons, therefore he had this vision. The Ein Seimchin Olav, you cannot rely on his whole Gemara. His whole Gemara he can't rely on because he was playing around with demons, and in his mind, this is figments of his imagination. And he continues. So what's pshat in the pasuk? Yesh nisbul, the people who pass away and blame mishpat. Literally, it means that sometimes people get murdered. So they weren't supposed to die and they got murdered. That's what it means. And the Meisher Ben Chananu, he says, this whole Gemara we just learned that you cannot rely on somebody's imagination.
How does that Rabbeinu Chananu stem sich with the Mishnah in Avos, which says, Al da teiftat fuch, but that Kodesh Baruch Hu mezamen shneim lepun dekechod, and one climbs up a ladder and drops something on the other. I mean, that gives us to believe that there's a system to all of this. Nothing is stam by chance. It's all
exactly. Even murder, that was the plan, that this person should be murdered. What do you mean, Yesh Nisbah B'lei Mishpat? If somebody got exactly what you just said, that's a separate.
He stimmt us with what Rabbeinu Chananel says now. That
good question.
Sometimes a person.
I don't know. This whole Rabbeinu Chananel is very difficult. I haven't seen anyone talk about it, so I don't know. I don't know. And the fact that he says that the whole Gemara is not reliable is a thing of somebody's imagination. Then why would Gemara put it in? I don't know. I thought an extraordinary Rabbeinu Chananel from beginning to the end.
Wasn't it? This is Rabbi Bar Abaya. Wasn't it Abaya who? I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was a Masechta Brachas we had where he made this whole concoction that if you put it in your eyes, you could see shadim, but he says don't do it. Wasn't that? It was
in the beginning of Brachas. In the beginning of Brachas, it tells you use
the black cat, 7 generations.
And then you look at the coal on the floor to see if you see footprints and all that. It wasn't a buyer, no.
No? Okay.
No, I don't remember who it was, but it wasn't. I don't think it was a buyer. Interesting.